Welcome to Stoic Mindset Women. Today's story is about 4 words that shattered everything I thought I knew. 4 words that once soothed my soul. But one night, they became the knife that cut it open. They say, I begin, my voice almost a whisper. That sometimes it's not the loud arguments. Not the slammed doors. Not the shouting that echoes down the hallway. That break you. Sometimes. It's a whisper. 4 words. Take it easy, baby. I used to think those words belonged to me. Like they were stitched into my heart. Daniel's voice, low and warm, would pour them into my ears when life felt heavy. When my thoughts spun out of control. When tears blurred my vision and I couldn't breathe. But on one unremarkable Friday night. A night that was supposed to be about comfort, about surprising the man I loved. I heard them again. Only this time. They weren't meant for me. Chapter 1, the beginning before the ending. I was 22 when I met Daniel. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't an instant movie scene kind of love where 2 strangers lock eyes in a crowded room and the world fades away. No, ours began like a slow sunrise. Gentle. Unassuming. The kind of connection that quietly builds in the background until one day you wake up and realize you can't remember a time when their voice wasn't in your life. We met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. The restaurant was one of those cozy little Italian places with warm lighting and a smell that wrapped around you like a blanket. Garlic, rosemary, and freshly baked bread. I was late, as usual. He was early, sitting near the end of the table, nursing a glass of red wine. When I sat down across from him, I noticed his laugh before I noticed his face. It wasn't loud, but it had this sincerity. The kind of laugh that made you want to laugh too, even if you didn't catch the joke. When I did look up, really look, I saw eyes that seemed to hold a story I hadn't read yet. Blue. Not the icy kind, but the kind that reminded me of the ocean on a still morning. He asked me about my favorite book. Not what do you do, or where are you from? But about the stories I loved. That should have been my first clue that he was different. Our first weeks weren't a whirlwind. They were, steady. He texted me good morning but not every single day. And somehow that made it feel more real. We'd go for walks instead of expensive dinners. We'd sit on park benches and watch the world happen around us. He'd listen, really listen, when I spoke, and remember the smallest things. The first time he brought me flowers, it wasn't because of an anniversary. It was because I'd gotten my first real job. A bunch of daisies, tied together with twine. Because they're bright, he said, and they remind me of you. When my father died a year later. Daniel didn't say much. He didn't try to wrap my grief in platitudes. He just held me. And I swear, in those weeks, he became the place I called home. He learned my tea the way someone learns a song. 2 sugars, a little milk, never stirred too hard because it ruins the foam. He'd make it for me without asking, without measuring. Just muscle memory. We weren't perfect. But we were ours. And for years, that was enough. Chapter 2, the summer we moved in. It was the summer before my 27th birthday when Daniel suggested we move in together. It wasn't some grand, cinematic proposal. No romantic dinner, no champagne toast with twinkling lights in the background. We were sitting on his couch, barefoot, eating leftover pizza straight from the box. He was watching me fold a paper napkin in half, something I always did when my hands were restless. And out of nowhere, he said, I think it's time. I remember blinking at him, the words hanging in the air between us. Time for what? I asked. He leaned back, one arm draped lazily over the sofa. For us to live together. It just makes sense, doesn't it? It did make sense. After almost 5 years, we were already spending most nights at each other's places. I had a toothbrush at his apartment, he had half his t-shirts in my closet. The idea of waking up next to him every morning instead of just on weekends felt like the next chapter in the story I'd been waiting to write. I said yes before he even finished his slice. And for weeks, I walked around with this quiet, humming joy in my chest. The apartment. We found a 2-bedroom on a street lined with tall maple trees that turned gold in autumn. The windows were big and faced west, which meant sunset spilled into the living room like liquid fire. There was a tiny balcony where I imagined we'd drink tea together on lazy Sunday mornings, and a kitchen just big enough for 2 people to dance in without stepping on each other's toes. Moving day was chaos, boxes stacked higher than my head, Daniel struggling to assemble the bed frame without swearing too loudly. We ordered Chinese food and ate it cross-legged on the floor because the table was still in pieces. He took a picture of me that night, sitting on the bare mattress, hair messy, hands wrapped around a carton of lo mein. "You look happy," he said. And I was. Life together. The first few months were exactly what I'd dreamed of. He'd leave little notes for me on the fridge. "Have a good day, love you," with a doodle of a coffee cup. I'd make him tea before bed, the way he liked it, strong, no sugar. We had our shows, our inside jokes, our rituals. But love doesn't send a calendar invite before it starts to change. The shift, when it came, was quiet. So quiet I almost missed it. It started with little things. He stopped asking how my day was, not every time, but often enough for me to notice. He stayed later at work. His phone, which had always been unlocked, now had a password. When I asked, he brushed it off. Just for security. You know, work stuff. I told myself it was nothing. We were just busy. Tired. Maybe this was what long-term love looked like, less fireworks. More routine. And for a while, I believed that. But in the quiet moments, when I'd sit alone on the balcony, tea cooling in my hands, I felt it. The distance. Like we were still living together, but no longer living with each other. A suspicious silence. One Thursday night, I came home to find him already asleep. The apartment was dark except for the faint blue glow of the TV. On the coffee table sat 2 wine glasses, one still half full. And a plate with crumbs that didn't match anything in our fridge. When I asked the next morning, he said he'd had a late-night snack and fallen asleep watching something. I didn't push. But a small, sharp voice inside me whispered, "Pay attention." Chapter 3, The Night That Changed Everything. It was a Friday in early autumn. The kind of evening when the air feels crisp enough to need a jacket. But the leaves are still clinging to their green. Holding back from surrendering to the season. I'd just wrapped up a 3-day work trip. One of those exhausting conferences where the days blur into each other. And the food is always slightly too salty and never hot enough. I was tired, but the good kind of tired. The kind that comes from knowing you're heading home to the person you love. On the drive back, an idea struck me. Daniel had no idea I'd be home tonight. He thought I'd be arriving the next morning. I pictured the surprise, his face lighting up when I walked in. The way his arms would pull me close. The way his voice would soften when he said, "You're back early." It was such a small thing. But I'd always believed that love was made of small things. The surprise plan. Instead of going straight home, I stopped at the Thai place Daniel loved. The one tucked between a laundromat and a tattoo parlor. Where the owner knew our order by heart. "Basil chicken, extra garlic?" she asked, smiling. I nodded, feeling the anticipation grow. The smell of fresh basil, chili, and warm rice filled the paper bag. And I imagined him walking into the kitchen, inhaling. Grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. I even picked up a bottle of his favorite craft beer from the corner store. This wasn't just dinner. It was a little celebration for no reason at all. By the time I reached our street, the sun had set. And the street lamps were casting golden pools of light onto the sidewalk. I parked the car quietly. Tucked my coat tighter around me. and carried the warm bag of food toward our building. I remember thinking, this is going to be one of those memories we laugh about years from now. A moment we'd retell to friends. Remember the night she came home early and surprised me with Thai food? I had no idea. No idea that in the next few minutes, I would trade the rest of our history for a silence I'd never asked for. Unlocking the door. Our door was never locked when he was home. But that night, the deadbolt was turned. A small thing, maybe. But it made me pause. I juggled the food in one hand. Pulled out my keys. And as I slid the metal into the lock, a sound reached me. Music. Soft. Jazzy. Not the kind we usually played. But the kind you'd expect in a low-lit lounge where time moves slower. I smiled at first, thinking maybe he'd set the mood for himself while waiting for me. But then, I heard it. Laughter. A woman's laughter. It was the kind of laugh you don't fake. Full-bodied. Effortless. Like the person making you laugh has done it 100 times before. My fingers froze on the door handle. My brain told me to open it. To walk in and see what was happening. But my body wouldn't move. Instead, I stood there, listening to my own heartbeat in my ears. To the faint clink of a glass being set down. And then, the whisper. Daniel's voice. Low. Affectionate. Almost tender. Take it easy, baby. The words landed like glass shattering inside my chest. She laughed again. Not surprised. Not startled. Like she'd heard it before. Like she knew it belonged to her. But it didn't. It wasn't hers. That was my whisper. My name. The phrase he'd saved for moments when I was unraveling. When I couldn't stop overthinking. When tears blurred my eyes. When life felt like too much. And now, he was giving it away. Like it had never been sacred at all. I didn't burst in. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the food at the wall. I stepped back. Quietly. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. I walked down the hallway. Out the building. Into the cool night air. My hand still clutching the warm bag of Thai food. As though holding on to it would keep me from falling apart. I don't even remember starting the car. I just remember sitting in the driver's seat. Basil and garlic filling the small space. Tears falling without permission. And realizing. The home I thought I was coming back to. Was gone.